When A.J. Seymour moved to Puerto Rico in 1962 to become the Information and Cultural Officer of the Caribbean Organization, Kyk-over-al went into hiatus. He returns to Guyana in 1965 to assume the duties of Community Relations Officer of the Demerara Bauxite Company Limited, and does not revive Kyk publication until 1981. Filling the gap was KAI, the official organ of the National History and Arts Council of British Guyana, which became the official organ of the National History and Arts Council of Guyana in 1966, the year of independence from Britain. Guyana's independence occurred in a worldwide upheaval as colonies of the British Empire claimed severance from Britain. India in 1950, Ghana in 1957, and others following in a collapse of dominoes. The new political freedoms nourished an explosion of talent, thrusting writers onto the world stage. For example, Chinua Achebe and Wole Soyinka of Nigeria, both winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature. As the world changed politically, poetry also developed new ways of presenting experience. Kai had continued cultivating poetry's garden since many poets who had previously published in Kyk now presented poems to Kai. In his broadcast to schools sponsored by the National History and Arts Council, A.J. Seymour continues to nurture young poets. These broadcasts become issue number 7 of Kai, and in introducing new writers, AGS presents a poem by Annette Warren that I would like to read to you. Nocturne in Steel was the crude oil drum, was a black arm pounding, was the sweat coursing down from a laboring human, was the visible heat of the unrelenting sun, was a man's obsession to escape the confines of drab surroundings in forging these crystal notes sprinkled on the black velvet of exciting night. Silver ping pong music ringing through the labyrinth of the senses into the inmost sanctum of the soul. So by 1981, the creative gardens nurtured at the beginning of the literary magazine had matured in new ways. Poets were pruning the restricting forms of the English canon and grafting new varieties celebrating life around them, slowly and deliberately. Our older poets also changed. When Kyk began publishing again, issue number 29 was devoted to short stories and book reviews. Issues number 30, now co-edited with Ian MacDonald, shows how writers have grown their talents, and a blossoming of free verse appears without boundaries, which incorporates new rhythms. A welcome addition is the presence of voices from the hinterland, such as Edwina Melville, a journalist writing from the Rupununi, and Stephanie Correia, poet, potter, illustrator, who also adds her pen and ink drawings to illustrate her poems. At this time, Kyk's covers highlight pen and ink drawings by local artists, including Stanley Graves and Stephanie Correia. These short programs present only a few examples of the rich new art maturing in our poetry gardens. Martin Carter 1927 to 1997, was an early and consistent contributor to Kyk. AJ singles out Martin Carter and Wilson Harris as the two stalwarts who could be relied upon to send in poems to be printed. Poem 1, Poem 4, Demerara Nigger. Gemma Robinson notes, these poems comprise some of Carter's most syntactically and semantically opaque work. In Poems of Affinity, Carter had declared that he was starting new work to be collected as Poems of Mortality. In 4 poems and Demerara Nigger, we find the first expressions of this never to be published collection.
One, trees are arranged like mourners by a sadness, root, stem, and wreath, and high above the crown. And a lizard upside down walks on the moon, futile rebuke of mourning. It will fall. Balance was never. The spindle warps the thread. The spin, the spindle, and a work, the work. Body of soul. Which world is like this one, if not this one? Which waywardness as right as this scale leaning? The thing to be before must be the thing again. More is that which was first and stays the first. Again because before. Apart because between. All is dominion. The beach it breaks on is what makes it ocean.
The manuscript shows that the poem was originally titled Renewal. The spared are not the saved. Compare Primo Levi, The Drowned and the Saved, a collection of 8 essays by Italian Jewish author and Holocaust survivor Primo Levi about his time incarcerated in Auschwitz. As another commentary describes, Levi posits that in the camp there are 2 types of people, the saved and the drowned. Each person is desperately and ferociously alone and responsible for their own survival.
4. The spared are not the saved, the living but the unhanged. When that stair of the gallows collapsed, no one was treading on it. All had been hanged already. Hangman gone home, no wood ants in his house. So I was told and saw, but still not seeing, doubt. Because everywhere something betokened and previous is always to happen. And everywhere something ordained and mortal is rightly to method. Hangman himself to bereave would ants their trade to accomplish in stair of house and of gallows, nor confidence betrayed. Truth such as this, recovered and famous justice made.
Gemma Robinson explains in her notations that references in this poem range from Dante's Inferno to medieval Italian political schisms and a 19th century treatise by Thomas Carlyle titled Occasional Discourse on the Nigger Question. Farinata was a 13th century Italian leader of the Ghibellines. The Ghibellines were a political faction in Italy opposed to the Guelphs.
Demerara Nigger by Martin Carter. In right accordance and demandingly because what withstands stands, Farinata the Ghibelline entertained great scorn of hell and asked about ancestors. So be it. Demerara Nigger downward through the horse. Hells are comparable, but mind stays in advance of dispensation. This foot, for instance, this shoe, step, floor, book, for instance, lamp, from one to the other, and words tortured out like a turd, until the sudden fumble of the premonitory wing of the bat in the roof. I held mortality a thing to be endured, human fact deliverable. What when fear is hope, if no messenger rode, way and cause as right, if not an ending? Therefore, found it just often to barter talk for sight, and turn aback and confuse clocks. At any cost, I had to go. Went scorning and demanding, mortality put to question, cosmic justice reckoned in condemning, a horse of hell as likely as the riding companion mind, mind in advance of mind, the mind requiting and mind singular, enabled mind, mind minded to suppose nigger and gibelline.
Mahaday Das, 1954 to 2003, was a gifted Guyanese poet. This poem illustrates both the wit and the coy, almost flirtatious quality of some of her poems.
There's a finished play by Mahaday Das. There's a finished play transcripted in my head. In a large, empty auditorium behind drawn, heavy curtains, the whole act's been rehearsed. At the climax, the heroine fell with all her skirts deep into his eyes. He, a chivalric lover, eyes masked from the world, his ready feet in love's stirrups, galloped in upon the moment, snatched her up with a passionate kiss to his breast. Together they rode to the land of love. But you, sweetheart, watching me intently, are you sitting in the wings?
Velma Pollard was born in 1937 to a farmer and school teacher in Woodside, St. Mary, in the northeast of Jamaica. Both Velma and her sister, Erna Broadburr, showed an affinity for the arts at a young age. Velma earned an MA in Education from McGill University and an MA in the Teaching of English from Columbia University. She taught in high schools and universities in Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, and the USA.
Pearl drops, she said, and smiled towards her breasts. Too cold for turning on, I said. My poets warm to raising tipping naseberries on the limb. Pearl drops are cold and white and dead. However came that image in your head? Now that the doctors say the end is on its way, I find me thinking, pearl drops. Pearls lie deep, the ocean gathering life drops, storing on its floor, cold people with cold pearls. Pearl drops, I hear her say, and not too late, the oneness of her voice.
Steve Prasad is described as a young Guyanese poet in issue 31 of Kyk.
Time and the Fortunes by Steve Prasad. Time and the fortunes, life and its dreams, madness with its anger, solitude with its loneliness, laughter with its sadness, discussion with its intent, running with its freedom, and love beckons them all. Mountains that we yearn to climb, forests where we long to sleep, places where we long to walk, promises that we must keep, hands that we hold, things that mean a lot to us, the crying faces of hungry children, and love beckons them all. Beaches, churches, factories, dark and bright nights, alley cats, sick men with healthy minds, women with exposed breasts, brave men with cringing fears, old people with young hearts, and love beckons them all.
Kyk's list of contributors describes Lily Ferdinand as a former counselor of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a lecturer in law at London University.
Zork by Lily Ferdinand. We went to Zork. Mud and slush. Slip slap, the old house is falling down. Falling down Dutch pillars in once Dutch soil. White, speckled red. Do I remember a baby crying out of a skylight near the sky? I remember a naked girl bathing by pond, all wet and black, except for the suds. And an old woman calling me back from my dreams. For what? Soup and fufu. Saddle seat, boy. Saddle seat, boy. Don't spoil your clothes. And he cried. Wear the old dress, girl. Far too short. No minis then. Lots of scrap iron there, scraps of me. Some by the front step, onto the bottom house. Some round and smooth, some jagged. How they hurt me to see again, to know the old woman calling me back. Back. Punting down the pond trench on a Sunday afternoon. You recognize? Chase the fish, miss a big one. You fought? Laughter as I run away to sing a song in my hammock. Rock-a-bye, baby. Rock, rock, rock tonight.
This double issue, Golden Kyk, contains selections from all 28 issues of the magazine from 1945 to 1961. It was an anthology intended to entertain and edify new readers everywhere. George Campbell, a Jamaican poet and playwright, published first poems in 1945 and was one of the more important poets in Focus. This poem was originally published in Kyk in 1957.
History makers, women stone breakers, hammers and rocks, tired child makers, haphazard frocks, strong thigh, rigid head, bent nigh, hard white piles of stone under hot sky, in the gully bed. No smiles, no sigh, no moan. Women childbearers, pregnant frocks, willful toil shearers, destiny shapers, history makers, hammers and rocks.
Because I used to see them as a child. I used to stand up and look at them at what they were doing. Mm.
And I used to marvel at her dexterity in the use of that hammer, breaking stones.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
My
because
my
it used to be-
grandmother was a stone breaker briefly.
Look at that! Look at that!
Wow.
This is what Carl Jung calls synchronicity.
Yeah,
This
my grandmother was a
perfect.
stone breaker.
This is a perfect example of synchronicity, right?
This poem was originally published in Kyk in 1952. Some of Martin's shortest poems contain multitudes of references, colloquial and literary, and possible meanings. Gemma Robinson writes, UC Koyana remembers Carter's political campaigning. Quote, he would say something like this to a meeting large or small. Now I am sure you all agree with me that this colony called British Guyana is a jail. Now, why is it a jail? It is not because you and I are in some cell with an iron bar and a big key. No, it is not that kind of jail. If read as standard English, the phrase can be interpreted as an imperative. If read as Creole, the phrase operates multiply as an imperative, perhaps inverting and strengthening Creole imperative, galang or golang, as a new composite noun. Prison is a go back. And as part of an abbreviated sentence, a prison forces a person to go backwards. Lash of two things. Lash is the felt experience of the slave, prompted by back. Kamau Brathwaite opens his New World trilogy, The Arrivants, with words that confronted slavery in the Caribbean and its African cultural inheritance. Drum, skin, whip, lash, master, sun's cutting edge of heat. When asked how he became a poet, Carter replied, in jail, it is hard to walk forward, so you walk back. And you walk through to yourself. In the process of walking back, you walk through to yourself.
Who walks a pavement? Iron gate, the terrible hands of a clock. A calendar with days scratched off and buried. Slant roof of slate black as the floor of tight cell is not a prison, nor a convict shelter. A prison is go back, go back, go back. Lash of two things. Shell, which is the heart, and heart, which is the shell, the hollow tear. The man of time whose look can stain a sky, who walks a pavement, walks and disappears.
Ellsworth, McGranahan, Sheikh Keen, 1927 to 1997, was a Vincentian jazz musician and poet. This poem was originally published at Kyk in 1957.
My love, are you strong? My love, are you strong? I will bring my life to you like a bundle of washing. And all they say is, my soul. I will bring like washing to your sweet rivers. And will you say this? Drink deeply, sink deeply, dream deeply of cleansing in the river's bowls. My love, are you strong? I will bring my sins to you on the breast of your rivers like stones I will bring my sins, prayerful to be swept along and away. And will you say this? Will you say, sigh sweetly, die gently, dream deeply of cleansing in the river's bowls?
Edwina Melville, 1926 to 1993. Guyanese journalist and poet. Edwina was born in Georgetown, but settled in Rupununi after her marriage to Charles Melville in 1950. Several of her stories were published on the BBC Caribbean Voices program in the 1950s. She would later represent District 9 as an MP. This poem was originally published in Kyk in 1953, when Edwina would have been in her 20s.
Edwina Melville poem. Savage moon, poignant cry of man for his mate, and woman sultry, mocking with eyes of hate. Lithe and lonely, walking along a wall, red skirt blown about her legs and long black hair falling over shoulders bare and touching breasts young and full of pulsing life. Eager, nonchalant, a dreamer, just strolling along the wall, knowing the man would follow.
Sir Derek Allan Walcott, 1930 to 2017, was a St. Lucian poet and playwright. He received the 1992 Nobel Prize for Literature. This poem was originally published in Kyk in 1952.
Derek Walcott's A City's Death by Fire, first published in his book 25 Poems in 1948, printed first in Trinidad in 1949. There seem to have been two printings in Barbados. I actually have a photocopy of the 25 poems. But this poem has become the most popular Walcott poem in St. Lucia. At his school, children recited, even older people, and I often wonder myself, as someone who knows Walcott's work up to his most recent work, his final works, don't they know any other poems by Walcott? But this is tremendously popular. Of course, the city's death by fire refers to the great 1948 fire. I was only 6 weeks old. In 1948, when much of Castries was burnt. And Walcott, of course, lived a bit to the eastern end of the city. His part of the city was not burnt. But if you know Castries at all, from the Chaussee Road right down to the sea, everything was burnt. And so this was Walcott's, as a tribute to the city or reflection on the fire. The poem is a sonnet, and I think it reflects the influence of Dylan Thomas. Of course, Walcott in those years, 18 years old, his head would have been filled with the Dylan Thomases and the T.S. Eliots and so on, of modern English literature. He was always ahead. He knew the older classics, but he certainly was up to date with all the modern poets. And so I guess A.J. Seymour used this, possibly for the first time, printing it in a Caribbean journal. A City's Death by Fire, Derek Walcott. After that hot gospeler had leveled all but the churched sky, I wrote the tale by tallow of a city's death by fire. Under a candle's eye that smoked in tears, I wanted to tell in more than wax of faiths that were snapped like wire. All day I walked abroad among the rubble tales, shocked at each wall that stood on the street like a liar. Loud was the bird-rocked sky, and all the clouds were bales, torn open by looting and white in spite of the fire. By the smoking sea where Christ walked, I asked, why should a man wax cheers when his wooden world fails? In town, leaves were paper, but the hills were a flock of faiths to a boy who walked all day. Each leaf was a green breath, rebuilding a love I thought was dead as nails, blessing the death and the baptism by fire. Derek was always strong, and he said, a young poet, nothing wrong with imitation. Mm-hmm. So, and very often the early critics used to accuse him of echoing all the English writers. But for Derek, it was a deliberate thing. And I certainly in my own writing learned from him in that. I take poems by Yeats and Philip Larkin that I liked. And I write poems exactly imitating the lines, the rhymes and everything. But I often think it is like a painter. If you take a Rembrandt and a young artist tries to paint a Rembrandt, then you begin to learn how Rembrandt did that, how we mix the paints, how we did it like. And out of that, you come to your own voice and your own style. So nothing wrong with imitation. And Walcott proved it over and over again, you know?
Issue 35, October 1986. Cyril Dabydeen is a poet, writer, critic, and educator. He grew up on Rose Hall Sugar Estate and immigrated to Canada in 1970. He was appointed Poet Laureate for the City of Ottawa in Canada from 1984 to 1987.
Lives. A beginning storm sets my blood racing. I imagine the past with drumbeats, atavistic again. I am memory of the tropics. I listen to hoofbeats in the careering clouds. I'm watchful as always, meandering with each spell of rain, each setback to the ground. I wait my turn. Stepping out with ritual, I build canoes from the heat of my insides, skin bark, blood coursing round a cambium heart. I am now Raleigh, making up for lost time. I bend and turn through the winding thickets. My veins reek of silver and gold. I am at the Orinoco. My eyes meet at the limit of ground and sky. I am history in the making. I am topsy-turvy once more.
Vibert Ian Duncan was a Guyanese performance poet and storyteller.
Powerful. Control of the source means control of the power. Food security, you've got to produce what you need to consume. Freedom from slavery is in self-sufficiency. They will feed you when they need you, then for their own wicked intentions put you through starvation. Food security for surety. Freedom from slavery is in self-sufficiency. Control the source. Feel the power.
Stephanie Correia, 1930 to 2000, was a poet, illustrator, artist, ceramicist, and teacher. Much of her work explored Amerindian life and stories, and her imagery grew heavily on Amerindian petroglyphs. Stephanie was the daughter of Stephen Campbell, the first Indigenous person to serve as an MP.
Stephanie Correia's PI Man Cures. Shake, rattle, smoke cigar, drink tobacco juice, tie hammock for the sick one, bring green boughs to hand, empty house, locked door, put the fire out, total darkness, all is still, nothing moves about. Shake, rattle, chant song, hear the distant roars coming closer, here they come, now, blood-curdling howls. PI calls. Kunaima hears. Evil ones come in. Shout. Whisper. Roar. Growl. Terrifying din. Winged things. All shapes coming through the roof. Question. Answer different voices. PI must know the one. Come, go. All kinds creatures, even humans, wax, wane, bump, thump, held by PI man. Circle rattle, even faster. Crystal fire, sparks fly. Fight fire with fire. Blow smoke, suck poison, pull out spirit darts. Long night, PI cures. Kanaima now departs.
Chant to Earth Mother 1 by Stephanie Correia. Spirit fighter, sacred rattle, fashioned by me from a perfect calabash. 4 mouths to face in all directions. A crown of brilliant feathers, carrier of crystal fire, to fight the evil ones. I only hold the power to shake the rattle, chant the song, to use the instruments ancestors left me to guard, protect, and heal the people of my tribe. Ages ago, it seems, since first I learnt this lore, understanding secrets, spirit growing ever stronger, bitter years of fasting, self-denial, a child when I began to walk this testing road. For I am PI man. And now, true testing time has come. Feathered, fierce-eyed, painted warriors await my word for a successful hunt. For first, I must go down to underworld to parley with Earth Mother for the souls of animals. Now gather round, my people, help me. Bear me up with song and dance and ritual as I embark upon my perilous journey. Drink the curry, beat the drum, move in sinuous rhythms, rattle shaking ever faster, tobacco juice, my long cigar, ancient incantations rising, falling, chanting endlessly. Earth shackles break as I rise up, my spirit now set free. I ride weightlessly upon enchanted bird. Come, guardian helpers, lead me through. Come, hawk and eagle, snake and lizard, jaguar, alligator, shield me round. Up steep mountains, through deep lakes, down long rivers winding dangerously, through treacherous swamps and fetid forests. The demon ones are kept at bay, until at last, deep in the underworld, I face Earth Mother with my plea. Majestic, threatening, there she stands, her animals enfolded in her outstretched hands.